associated with you guys since 1977. That's about 40 years. And I remember people like Rapp and Mort Richardson and Lavender and Visser and Gunther and several others. So today I'm going to talk about myself, which is my favorite person, and then I'll make it very informal. If this talk gets to a point where you have a question, just raise your hand and ask for it. I can elucidate on a point that needs elucidation, but I will reserve the right to get back on track. And now, this Raven's Flight to Freedom. Why ravens? Well, it's an animal that I am kind of associated with. When I was a kid, I went to a kindergarten. The owner of the school there was named Raven, but it was in Lithuania, where I was born. Then I always watched the ravens, and I used to see them in winter time, in those Nordic winters, when they sat on telephone poles and sort of meditated in the terrible cold. Then I went to Germany, and then I came to the United States, and in Germany I read the German mythology a lot, and the last war I spent in Germany, the last year of the war. And the ravens seem to be appear in mythology as messengers of the pagan gods, you know. And since I liked Wagner's opera, I often met them in the theater, so to say. Then when I came to the United States and I ended up in the Air Force, and I became an electronic warfare officer, and those guys are called crows or ravens. So, you know, from childhood to studies in the kindergarten up to, that's how I earned my money, was as a raven. So, and I felt compelled to sort of write my memoirs, which I wouldn't really call a memoir. It's more a collection of memories of my travels from Lithuania through wartime Germany, and then to United States, and then I'm ending up in Asia, and then retiring from the Air Force and working in Aerospace Corporation for Howard Hughes and Summa Corporation. And so, you know, I felt compelled to write a book. Why? I don't know. My family said, well, Dad, why don't you write a book? And so did some of my friends. So I wrote a book. It's horrible. And, but I didn't write to make it. And so how did they survive the war and all these things and several wars? I don't know. My guardian angel sort of took care of me. And I came out through all those several wars without a scratch, so to say. And how? It's because somehow, every moment, you know, I left a building, the building exploded. And that wasn't me. That somehow, and I was helped by people, even in Germany, and just through their humanity, because not everybody in Germany was a Nazi or a bad guy. In fact, there were quite a few good guys there, and who retained sort of their humanity amongst all these horrible things that were happening. And maybe that's the law of the world, that somehow righteousness prevails. So this is the common thread that goes through my book. And Didn't move.
It's electronic.
Will be a collapse.
Well, see, technology. I remember the days we used to have view graphs. For they worked. Yeah. Well, I got to talk to the pictures. It happened last time when I spoke here. Well, okay, so this is a picture of me contemplating whether I should write the damn book. You know, and it's just such drudgery. I joined the Writers Club here in the library, and that sort of inspired me. And since I was talking about myself, I have no reference page in my, no footnotes. It all comes from me, you know. So I decided finally that, well, I'm gonna write it. And since I consider myself, my self-image is, I live like a Spartan. I think like an Athenian, and I behave like a Roman. So, you know, let's see if I live up to that. Oh, yeah. And my outline of my book and my talk, I'm gonna just briefly say, my life in Lithuania before the war, I'm actually only look very young, you know, but I'm actually very old. And life in Lithuania, I remember the 30s very well. And the Russian and German occupations, and then leaving Lithuania, surviving in wartime Germany, and I also thought that not all survived. I was just lucky. And then they lived 5 years or 4 years in displaced person camp in Germany as a refugee from war and left over. And then I was lucky to emigrate to America, and even more lucky to end up as a cadet at the Citadel. And I don't know whether that was such a big luck, you know, because that place is cross between a museum and a jail. And, but it was wonderful. Actually, it's a very good school. I recommend for all people of all ages. And then I went into the service and the Air Force, and went there for over 20 years and retired, and then worked as an engineer in Aerospace Corporation and in Suma Corporation that's our fuses #1 company. And then when I worked for Aerospace Corporation also, the Red Circle A. And then when the Soviet Union collapsed, I went back to Lithuania periodically, not all the time, and I served there as a consultant to the military and also taught at the military academy there. Now, that was my debt to the old country. I had to go back when it came back. See, Lithuania actually was one of the first countries to leave Soviet Union. Pretty feisty people, there are not too many of them, you know, 3.5 million, but dynamite comes in small packages, you know. And they left the Soviet Union. They were incorporated by force, but they left. And so, let me just sort of go on. This is where Lithuania is. Could you point it?
Hold it against your body.
Here. That's it. Yeah. And there is a, south of it, there is a little enclave. Put it to the left a little bit, yeah. That's a sort of a patch of land that belongs to Russia. And it used to belong to Soviet Union also. It was never Russian, it was a German town, Königsberg. They call it now Kaliningrad. And the Russians have an entry there, sort of squeezed in, and a certain area there is Russia now. It never was Russia. But in Potsdam Conference after World War II, they decided to let the Russians or the Soviets administer the place. And until the decision will be made later, sometimes, whether it goes to Germany or to Russia or Poland. But that decision was never made. So the Russians stayed there. I remember that in conferences where later on I'll talk about it, but I used to, when there were Russians present, I would ask them, when will you give up Königsberg, you know? And they got very upset about that. Didn't want to talk about it, and really cussed me out several times for bringing it up. That's my father. He fought in World War I, and at that time, Lithuania was under the Tsar of Russia. It was, so he fought in the Carpathian Mountains with General Brosilov, he was on his staff, and who was the most famous Tsar's generals at that time. And you know, and his brother was also an aviator at the time. So, and that's me in the War Museum in Lithuania, but not as a child, but when I came back. I'm playing with the lion statue there because putting my hand in the lion's mouth. But it didn't bite, as I told you, you know, I kind of was lucky. And here is the Citadel. And this is just to show you, I have many slides, so you have to kind of go fast. But as I say, I enjoyed the place, although some people hated it. Particularly the ones that their parents in the South made them go to this Citadel. Yeah. And that's not a good thing to do. So I never obeyed it. But I liked it, and several other people liked it. And so that's so much for that. And that's just to show you a few. Me visiting the Citadel maybe 10 years ago. And because we kept coming, that's a school that, you know, the alumni are very, well, we're not exactly a fraternity, we're not exactly alumni, we are a sacred order.
What's the
Dark side.
what's the population of the
Citadel?
Yeah, what's how many people are?
No, about 2,000. Yeah. Those are two generals. On the left is Bunting. He's the head of the BMI, Virginia Military Institute. And on the right is Marine Corps General Grinnell. They, respectively, they're presidents of those distinguished military colleges, as they call them. BMI and the Citadel. Those are sort of parallels to this point, and the federal. Why am I not remembering it? Yeah. Oh, that's me in the Air Force. Yeah. And this is the B-58 that I ended up as a combat crew member there as a Raven, DSO. This is our crew. I'm on the right. It was kind of interesting that our first flight as a crew. We went through training separately, but then we got together on our first flight as a crew. So we took off. This is just a little flight experience. The B-58 was a #1 airplane in the Air Force. It could fly Mach 2 and was a bomber and had a very important mission. And it was an airplane that we considered will get to its targets. And so our first flight, we sort of took off, and the pilot pulled up the gear and it didn't lock. Well, he called the command post and said, well, the gear is not coming up. What's this? Well, they say, we'll get the tech man. He got on the radio and says, well, I don't know what to do, but push your nose down suddenly, you know? Push the stick forward and hack it. So he did it, and the gear finally come up. So the pilot says, you know, he used a couple bad cuss words. I won't repeat, but he says, here I am in a multi-million-dollar airplane, and I have to kind of drop my nose in order to put the gear up. Okay, well, that wasn't the end. And we came out to altitude, maybe 26,000 feet. And the pilot says, well, what the hell are we? And the bomb nav guy says, I can't tell you because my radar is not turning on. Well, try to get it on, you know. And he told me, check the fuses, you know, and all that. Well, finally the radar came up. But the navigator couldn't orient himself. And then we went towards east. We wanted to hit Shreveport. And finally the pilot says, oh, the ground was calling us and saying, what airplane are you flying? He said, it's going so fast. And we said, oh, Hustler B-58. Evidently the air traffic control in that area didn't. That was the first time they saw one going through that fast. And then the pilot calls me and says, Al, are we over Shreveport? There is this, I see it on the left, you know. I say, and I looked out on the right and I saw the ocean. Gulf. No, I think we are over Houston. So finally we had to call the ground station, GCI, radar, and ask them give us a fix. So they gave us a fix. We finally settled down and completed the mission. And then we came back and started landing, and when we touched down, the tower called us, smoke is coming out of your gear, so stop as soon as you can and abandon the airplane. So we did stop, come to a screeching halt, and in those days we had see there are 3 cockpits, everybody was sitting in a separate cockpit. So mine was in the last one there. And each cockpit had a spool with a rope. You threw that spool out and you went down the rope. So the flight ended and we left this most modern airplane on the rope. Which later on though, it was a fine experience. I went to Bunker Hill and Air Force Base. That's in Indiana, it's called Grissom now. And it was a wonderful, very good wing of people, and we consider ourselves top of the Air Force, you know, because we flew the Mach 2 and all that. And then I had some experience with the F-111. In fact, since I had some experience with B-58s, they put me to write Patterson to work in the systems program office of F-111. It was called the Etzel at that time. You know, you remember? So all those unfortunate airplanes, you know, that were bad-mouthed by a lot of people, I was in them. And, see what I mean? I can't even find the right one. And then there's another picture of F-111. And well, this is already in Southeast Asia. And how did we end up there with the F-111? Well, the F-111 was built, and it was still undergoing certain tests, and we had still remaining the operational test. And General Chandler was the head of the SPO at that time, or no, General Zeckler and General Chandler and General Gossick. We had lots of generals there, and we were sort of captains, lieutenants, majors, and we talked to them like they were our buddies, you know. Bad habit to develop, I think. And so one time after work, General Chandler was in the office, and he talked to us. We were drinking coffee and chatting, and he says, "Well, I have to go tomorrow to see McNamara because they might cancel the damn program. It's, you know, we're not going too slow. We got this test for operational readiness and all that kind of stuff." Well, then we said, why don't we take some 6 airplanes, send them to Vietnam, and that will give it combat testing. He says, "Well, I'll mention that to McNamara tomorrow." I said, "Well, good speed." And General comes back next day. He says, "You know what? McNamara agreed. It's a good idea. So prepare 6 F-111s for testing in Southeast Asia." So we were assigned to Nellis Air Force Base to get 6 airplanes ready to go to Nam. We were not stationed in Nam, but we were to be stationed in Thailand, next door, which was still combat zone. And we would fly against the South Vietnamese Viet Cong and all that, and then North Vietnam also, and maybe Laos and places where they had this Ho Chi Minh Trail, maybe bombed it a little bit. And so we were preparing for this trip. This was our commander, Colonel Detman, and he was very good commander. He was always going first. And here is me, you know, me, and here we are already in Thailand. This is an airplane that later reconnaissance. Well, this is, let me go back a little bit. This time I'm getting ahead of myself just a little bit. Okay, so we went to Southeast Asia. Prepared those 6 airplanes. We arrived there, and the whole world was looking upon us. F-111, the Edsel is going to Nam to fight in the Vietnamese War. So when we landed, the base commander was a Thai man. It was a Thailand air base. So he met us with a band, and the airplanes taxied, passing review in front of his, what he placed himself, you know, and the pilots opened the cockpits and saluted while the passed in review, taxiing by the reviewing stand, you know. So everybody was jealous of us, and there were other F-105s there, squadrons, and they say, "You guys came in like eagles, but I bet you're gonna come out as chickens." And, well, by the way, I was attached to that with several other guys to that unit. We were supposed to get we were from the systems office. We were from the we were the engineers of the whole damn thing, you know, and we were not combat ready yet. I mean, myself and the team from Wright Patterson. We were supposed to get checked out right there in Thailand, but we never got to it. There were other guys ahead of us who were already checked out, tactical pilots and navigators. And so we began operations against North Vietnam and bombing. And we lost half of our force in about first month and a half. And we had only 3 left. Two of them disappeared. They took off against North Vietnam, and we never heard from them again. They probably crashed into the mountains. They're going terrain following radar, which was sort of avionics thing that flew, that made the airplane fly close to the ground, below radar. And the third one, we lost flight control problems, and the crew ejected. So that was fortunate. But the Air Force sent us 3 more airplanes to replace the ones we lost. And we stuck out there for a whole year, so to say. Some interesting things. I met many people I knew from the Citadel and from other places. Particularly remember at the bar our conversation with another fellow, an old friend of mine. He just came back from a mission over North Vietnam, and he was going back to Thailand to land. I think he was one of 5 pilots. And he had some bombs left and some ammo. And then he was flying over Laos, and he noticed that somebody was shooting at him from the hills there, and he saw where it was, he saw the... So he got mad and turned around, and all of a sudden he sees a whole column of vehicles, full of bad guys. They were jumping out of their trucks and all that, but he didn't have permission to intercept freelance targets. But he was so excited about it and so pissed off, the guy shot at him. So he turned around and really creamed that column. And he shut him up, and he says, "Oh, this was so good. Better than you know what." And then he landed and he destroyed his tape, because wherever you shoot, you get photographed, and he just accidentally opened it and to see if it's still there, and lost it. But he told me the story, so I continued it to give it forever. Such a heroic deed. And then we were recalled back to, after a year, we flew back to the States. I'd still would like to mention some of the pastimes we had in Thailand. It was great. We could go to town and eat Kobe beef and all that. There was a nice little town, Lee, and then, come back, and we had pet snakes. Because, they were pythons, really, and but they had to be fed. We needed rats or mice or chickens. And the snakes would eat a chicken, and they wouldn't eat for a couple of weeks. It was okay. So Harry and I went to town to buy some food for our snakes. And we stopped at a farmhouse, and we went in there, asked the Thai farmer whether he could sell some of the chickens for us, and he says, "Why do you need them?" "Oh, we have a snake, we have to feed it." "Oh, no, he wouldn't give it to us, he was... So we went to the next farm and didn't tell them what we're gonna do with it. We said we're gonna eat them. And so we got some snakes, chickens. And we came back, and the snake was a royal python, quite young, but it hasn't eaten for a long time, so they were somewhat hungry and weak. So we put the chicken in the cage where the snake was, and the chicken began to fight the snake. Holy mackerel. And so it was a question whether the chicken has to go or the snake. So we tied up the wings of the chicken a little bit and helped the snake to swallow him. And you know, it was a gruesome sight, the chicken traveling down the snake, and a gush of blood came out of the mouth. Sorry, I suppose you finished eating. Then for about a month, there was a crowd. Everybody that passed by gathered around when the chicken and the snake were fighting, you know. And then for a month they used to call us chicken killers. But we came down and we came back to the United States in Nellis. And we were going home right away, and we had reservations at the airport, civilian airport, to go back to Wright-Patterson and wherever our homes were. So the driver of an Air Force bus, blue bus, comes around and asks us, which way do you want to go to the airport? The fast road, which is a little bumpy, or the longer and slower? We got to be there quick. And we said, but safety first. That was a comment, very important. And so we were driving by, already riding by Tropicana Hotel, and the driver all of a sudden screamed, I can't control the bus. And there was a men working signs and a big ditch that they dug up by the street. And I saw the horizon come up. We were going right there in the ditch. And I flew out the window because I was sitting in the front seat there by the driver, but nothing happened to me except my brand new uniform that I had made in Bangkok for some $10 was torn to pieces. And so police came around immediately, and we had everything spread all over on the street. And so I asked the police to call the base and tell them that lots of classified material is spread all over the street there, and we need immediate assistance. So I think the half of Nellis Air Force Base jumped on motorcycles and they came up. And we end up in the Nellis Hospital on gurneys because I bumped my leg quite a bit, and other people were really injured. So we called our wives and everything from the gurneys there, and I said, well, I'm back. My wife says, oh, congratulations on you back. When you coming over? I say, well, it will take probably 2 weeks before. What? I say, well, we got into a little accident. Oh, come on, that's baloney. You guys want to stay in Vegas. I had to convince her, you know. And then finally, it all ended, and we got out and got back to Wright-Patterson. So, after that, I went to Germany because I finagled a job there with the troops in Germany, American troops. What?
About 5 more minutes, please.
What?
About 5 more minutes.
5 more minutes.
Oh, okay. So, 5 more minutes. Yeah, yeah. Well, this was the guy that led Lithuania, Landsbergis, into separation from Soviet Union. And Lithuania is separated, so I felt like I ought to go back and as a consultant to the military that were reestablishing themselves in there. Yeah. And here I am with one of the key guys there, and see, they organized themselves very fast and made sure that the Russians wouldn't come back. And so I just, those are a little target practicing exercise, nothing to it. And yeah, so we were there in Lithuania, helping them out, you know, telling them which wheel to turn first. And here is thing. See, once upon a time, Lithuania was a very, very big country. It lasted together with with Poland. And it was a Lithuanian-Polish Commonwealth. And the country went from Baltic Sea to the Black Sea, or still Crimea. And these people were reenacted the march on Crimea through Ukraine and Poland and all that. And so I just took some photographs of them when they came back. They were very well received, and etc. So, go on. Here is in Lithuania, they still have some leftover pagan temples, because Lithuania was the last country in Europe to turn Christian. So they still have, but they are more museums and people that make. Now there is a guy there that was 25 years in the Gulag that survived. That's second from the right. Yeah, that's a priest. And here are some freedom fighters, so to say. Well, I didn't do any fighting there, but there's the rest of the people that I knew. And here is the president of Lithuania and myself. Now that's President Adamkus. Actually, he's an American citizen, just naturalized American like I am. And but he went back also, and he became president of Lithuania. And here is a lady that's Minister of Defense, with a bunch of Marines that are stationed in Lithuania also. And here's me somewhere there with a white shirt, second row, yeah, and that's the Ministry of Defense staff. And I was an advisor. And here's the military academy man that he engaged me to teach in the military academy. So I taught there, coming back and forth to Palos Card. Here is my class. So for international, there were Estonians, Latvians, Lithuanians, Polish, Ukrainians, etc., etc., and Italians even. And here are class pictures. And, go on, yeah. And this is with the ambassador, American ambassador. There's it. She took a picture of. This is another guy that he was born when I graduated from the Citadel, and then when I retired, he became general, and all that is very interesting. Here's Bush in Lithuania. He visited in 1994. No, I mean 2004. And here I met Richthofen, one of the relatives of the Manfred von Richthofen. There are all kinds of Richthofens in Germany that are related to that famous pilot. Met one and here are some German guys in Lithuania also helping out. And here is a German general who was one of the first ones to come to Lithuania to help out. And here is a friend of mine and classmate, Jim Tange. He's his project was to find American pilots' graves in the crash sites that were created during the war. And I have to hurry up. See, this is me laying some flowers on Field Marshal Mannerheim's grave in Finland. Here is in Moscow. I made the trip to Moscow also to a conference. And here on the right is me at Austerlitz, where Napoleon crushed Russian and Austrian troops in his time, 1805. And I was there at the desk that he had that still stands. It's a sort of made out of rock, and you can see I was having my hand in my left coat pocket. And here is me visiting United States Air Force One with Carol. Oh, yeah. And so, since my 5 minutes are up, so sorry about that, guys, but my cameo was rather long. And if you want to read some more, you can get some books here, but I didn't write the book for to make money, ain't gonna do it. But it's pretty good. If you want to, you can have the hard copy costs 30, the soft copy costs 20. So over and out.
Any questions?
I just want to ask, with the recent developments or continuing developments in Russia under Putin, are you concerned about anything in the future of Lithuania, Estonia, Latvia?
Well, of course I am. I'm also concerned with the future of America. So the future depends on a lot of things. And the Russians are belligerent and they have something in mind. They want power. And they are going to continuously do everything they can to become number one in the world. If they're going to occupy the Baltic states, they might, because also Baltic states are very strategically located. They are a jumping point for the West into the Russians. They are also the jumping point to the West for the Russians. Because Russians want the Baltic hot. Because there are harbors there that they need. And they have only St. Petersburg and Kaliningrad. And Kaliningrad, someday the Germans might want it back, who knows. And, but as long as the tensions mount, and who knows, the future is unpredictable, anyway. It always was. Nobody predicted certain things that happened, and it happened. So, yes, I'm concerned, but we are doing everything we can to sort of stop the Russians of getting primacy. Yes?
What kind of defenses do the Baltic states have as far
Well,
as armies go?
they do. They have the, in Lithuania, I talked, there is, the Germans are there, the Americans are there to an extent, and the Lithuanians have 36,000 troops. That's 2 divisions at least. And they are, the Americans told me, the American officers tell me that when they visit a Lithuanian regiment, they feel that they are really in a military environment, so to say. And because, yes, they do have, and but who knows what the next war will be and how. And I think that the whole nature of warfare is changing tremendously. Big armies no longer count if, let's say, there are nuclear weapons, like the little rocket man in Korea. He is, you know, he's on par. He is very powerful because we don't want to accept the damage of nuclear war. And he, no, half of the Koreans go, it makes no difference to him. Perhaps. It wouldn't have made any difference to Hitler if he had atomic weapons, which he failed to develop, by the way. That was his mistake. And so if he had to go down, he would blow up the world, so to say. So it's, I don't know. There's no way of predicting it, but it's gonna be sporty, I'm pretty sure. All you have to do is turn on the TV and you. Okay.
One last
Thanks.
question, over here.
When was the last time you were in Lithuania?
About 2 years ago. I've been going there since 1990, on and off from here. Yeah. But right now I'm kind of no longer traveling, you know, it's I want too many birthdays, so I have to celebrate them with the family.
I hear that.
Okay. So if anybody wants any books, they can have it.
Yeah, I'll be there.
Wait, okay.